Middle-aged men chainsaw massacre. I don't know. That could be a
Coming
new
to
show. And
no screens near you.
yeah,
Very uneventful.
check out Quibi.
Yeah, that's how long it is. It's only you just see it. It's in a Quibi because we don't have enough content to really make a complete.
No, no, it's just one shot, and that's it.
One shot. He said no. He said yes.
All right, all right. Here with Jim Fisher. Jim, you want to go ahead and give us a little background on all of the things that you are?
Sure. Yeah. I currently live in Nashville. Been here for about 2 years now. Been I don't know if this sounds too cliche to say, but somewhat of a serial entrepreneur. I've started at least 9 businesses, and 9 that actually made money. I probably tried more things. Maybe we get into that. That this is just this journey of entrepreneurship or being in business for yourself is wrought with failure, but it's more about what you do after you fall down. And so, done a lot of things from uh, sales to construction consulting to digital marketing to owning a bar and restaurant in one of the biggest cities in the world, and everything in between. And I'm so grateful that pretty much all of it I've done with my twin brother. And so that's been a really a great gift. I was born with a built-in business partner, and so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, really loving Nashville. Can't complain about the weather here right now, so all good. Even in spite of all this, I get outside and I keep my distance.
All right, so we know who you are. I think the one of the things you mentioned was the bar, which unfortunately I never got the chance to go up and check out. But you ran that for quite some time, and in New York City of all places. So how did that come to be? I mean, you did really well. You were doing little podcasts or little commercials almost every day where you were talking about a new beer and you were giving you know what's the beer version of a sommelier? I don't know. There's probably a term. Okay, yeah. So you were doing that, and it was pretty awesome. Both I think you both and your brother were doing it. Sometimes you do the videos together, and then sometimes one would do it, and sometimes the other one would do it.
I was mainly the producer of it. He was the talent, and I was behind the camera. I edited them all together and did all that stuff and shot it. He was the guy in front of the camera 99% of the time. But yeah, um, the how did it come to be? A conversation at a wedding between family members. Hey, I think I'm going to start a coffee shop. And my brother said, you should probably go craft beer. He's like, really? Why? And one thing leads to the next. The next day, we were looking at real estate. We basically chose a property that next day. The rest is history. My brother and I put a business plan together. I said, here's the concept. And if I could point to one aspect of our success, like the key in it all probably comes down to maybe something overly simple I would just call hospitality. Is that our goal in our existence in our bar and restaurant? We're predominantly a beverage establishment, 80% by volume, but we did food too. But we did it all to the best of our ability, focused on that genuine sense of hospitality that was evidenced by the experience of our customer. We were there for our customer. My brother cemented the culture of our establishment that defined how our staff showed up and ultimately the experience they were able to deliver to our customers. And one of the things he always talked about was that people leave their house and they come to an establishment like ours to be recognized and taken care of. A lot of the beers that we have on tap, yeah, sometimes we were curating some of the best that you could find, which could be trouble to find anywhere else but a place like ours. But on the whole, a lot of this stuff could be found elsewhere. So why us? And it was because of the experience. It's because we took care of them, we recognized them, we treated them well, and delivered a great experience. And that was the key to our success. And then that permeates every other decision you make, how you put a menu together, even how you price things, the things that you put on the menu, the things that you leave off the menu. Your experience can be dictated by even things that you choose to stock or not. We were that diligent about it because it all came down to how are people going to feel when they walk in our door, or when they walk by.
Right.
They miss it. And
Yeah,
so,
they want to go to some place where everybody knows their name, and they're always glad that you came.
yeah, and that's like it's a cliche, but I think often those things, those simple to do, simple not to do. I think those are the keys to success in anything. It's the diligence to the simple, the things that matter, the easy to do, easy not to do. It's much easier. I mean, one of there was principles that we used. One of the biggest ones we called solve for water. If you go into any good restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
you will never go thirsty. That is a standard that permeates every great hospitality or food and beverage experience.
Mm-hmm.
You never go thirsty. And one of the ways you solve for water is like you're very intentional about it. And if that's your standard about water, how will you act with everything else? If you take water to that level, how will you do everything else? And I mean, it's like those simple things. If people never go thirsty, well, if we're that attentive to their glass of water, how will we care about every other aspect of their experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the bar was a success, but then you're now in Nashville.
How did that happen?
Right.
So what Brian and I, my partner, twin brother Brian, always wanted. We were about that experience and ultimately delivering that experience, which is our product. Our goal in that is to be successful in business and to never jeopardize that success in business by what other people's superficial desires are to define what the business may be. I mean, I think this is why so many people fail in the restaurant business, is because they go in it and they forget that their product has to be desirable, but it also has to be profitable, right? Because without profit, there's no reason for the existence of the business. And so there was 3 of us in partnership, and only 2 of us believed that. The other third person wanted to, believe that that it was their social club, that we should have music because music's cool. But to maintain that high standard of service, you need to do music right. Well, that takes a significant level of attention and investment in time at the minimum, which is the most valuable asset, and then money to do it right as well. And we were just like, well, what we have is great. People love us for what we do. Why do we need to change? And so the best decision was to move on, go to our next enterprise, and so that's what we did. In that process, exited the business in New York City. It's very successful. If you were to look at the numbers, it was incredibly successful. If you were to look at the reviews, it was by every account. So we left on top and moved on to something where we could, have even greater control over delivering that great experience. And so didn't need to be in New York anymore. Great season of our lives. So much. Love that city. Still have my New York driver's license. Still feel like in New York. I was born there. Moved to Florida when I was young. So, but a third of my life is New York, and so we looked for a place that still had good culture around food and beverage and entertainment, but better cost of living. Still had seasons. That's why we didn't go back south. And Nashville checked all those boxes, and here we are 2 years later. Really loving the decision, and I at this point don't see myself going anywhere else. Raising a family here, and it's crazy growth. I found when I came here, I had to insert relatively speaking as a qualifier and everything in front of everything I say about how I feel about Nashville. Especially to people who have been here for much longer than mine. Relatively speaking, cost of living is great. Traffic isn't that bad, because it from where I came from, relatively speaking, all really good. Absolutely speaking, traffic has, gotten worse and worse here, and housing costs has risen, but not for me. And I guess that's part of their problem is people like me. It's like, hey, compared to New York, like time to be a homeowner.
Right. So very different businesses. I mean, you've done 9 successful businesses, all very different, you would say, or is there kind of a theme? I mean, I know you mentioned hospitality is kind of, it sounds like that's the underlying idea.
They're all very different, but at the end of the day, I mean, I know you've heard this before. Might have even learned this principle I'm about to share at the same time, and that is success leaves clues. And so at the end of the day, business is successful business, especially, is rooted in a very consistent set of principles. And so while I find myself, whatever business I'm in is taking what I've learned from every other business or venture I've experienced and applying it and modeling it. I mean, so you look at hospitality, you look at, service and a customer experience. Well, I learned that when I worked at Apple, right? I learned customer experience and delighting people and truly serving others. And so that, evolution. And there's something I use today in my business that I've used in all my business, things that I've learned at Apple. So I feel like it's kind of a continuum, but it all comes down to, entrepreneurship is the assemblance of resources and through their combination, right, making them more valuable than just the parts themselves, right? That is what a business does. We bring this, and this together, and we present it to these people, and they value it more because of what it is, how we present it, and the value they can create with it. They value it more than what we the inputs required to create it, and that's what entrepreneurship is. And so that permeates everything, right? We built a menu at the bar. And we bought this beer here, but packaged it up, created this environment of service and hospitality and experience and education. And that's what created our ability to take the $2 beer and sell it for $8. Why? Because of the complete package. And those principles right there, that is every business. And so when you get down to the root principles, it's the same in everywhere. And it's just about, you got the objective reality and the subjective reality, and the subjective is where, like, who's your audience? What's the product? What does it mean to them? What problem are we solving? And these human interaction dynamics are really the difference between every business. But at the end of the day, we're trying to create value for others. And sometimes it's with a physical product, and sometimes that value is emotional. Sometimes that value is status. Sometimes it's actually the removal of a discomfort, a pain. And the more we realize that all we're doing is we're humans trying to combine resources to create an additional value through their combination for others, like, business is pretty much the same everywhere you go. So that's what I've learned. And now the question is like, well, what do I like doing? And how do I like to create value for people? And the biggest thing I've learned along this journey is the greatest power in business is focus. It's focusing on a very specific thing, there's a great principle out there. Maybe you can link it up in your show notes or something. I can send you a link. It's called the 5 1s. And it's about a sequential path of focus. Because so many people, especially earlier in your business journey, we think and we become full of fear when we consider the idea of focus, because we think that narrow lens means limitation. It means eliminating all this. And so we misconstrue the idea, and we say, oh, I'm eliminating opportunity. Right. Now opportunity is more scarce because I have a narrow point of view. And that's simply not true. Focus is magnifying its power. It's not eliminating. And you cannot scale. You can't turn something, your efforts, your outbound efforts, into an asset that perpetuates its value and can grow on its own without focus. So if your goal in business is to build an asset, a business that can operate itself, can grow itself, can spit off cash flow, that's the dream, right? Anybody I think that who goes into business for themselves is looking to create, let's just simply call it a money machine, right? That you put dollars in, you get more dollars out. Right. To do that, there's an unbalance of inputs to get there, to birth this asset, not unlike a child, I'd imagine. I'm not a father yet, but not unlike a child. But the only way you can turn the machine is the machine has to have a repeatable input and output, so it can be scaled and infrastructure will be built around it and stuff like that. And that's the biggest, learning I've had over my journey in all these businesses is you have to know who you serve, know why you serve, and know the outcome you deliver to them. and become relentless on just doing that. I mean, before we started here today, I told you I only work with one type of person. And in the beginning, there's a valley you go through and you dip. There's a great book by, was it Bald Shiny Head 2, Glasses, Purple Cows. He has the dip. I'll come to him anyway. He talks about this dip. When you get focused, you will go into the valley first. You'll feel like, why am I saying no to this? Why am I saying no to that? Why am I saying no to that? And then eventually you'll gain the certainty to what you're saying yes to, and that's when you propel. So focus is probably the greatest lever in success in any endeavor, let alone business enterprise, being laser focused. Seth Godin is the author.
Okay. You're very interesting because of all the different venues that you've done, and it's not like you're an old guy. You're still very young. So you've done multiple businesses, 9 successful ones. On the flip side of that, how do you decide when it's time to let go? I know we kind of talked about the bar, but how do you decide, okay, well, now it's time to move on? Is there something, because you're talking about focusing, right? Well, then how did these other businesses come to be then?
Right. That's a great question. How do you decide when, we talked about this in the pre-show as well. It's a constant reflection, and having self-awareness to say, am I growing through this or not? And is this what I want? Part of what we do now is it's where do you get energy? Because there's a time in the journey where you kind of just have to eat it, right? You kind of just have to try a lot of things, and you're a little bit distracted because you're trying to find the things that give you life, and you're trying to develop skills, right? I would say earlier in my journey, I don't think you start by focusing. That's not the beginning. The beginning is not focusing. There's a point in your journey where you have to cut away all the crap and say, this is what gives me life and what I'm truly good at. You don't, you realize your passion. You don't find it, right? And so you through reflection and trying a lot of things and putting effort, you realize like this is this is what everyone shouts from the heavens about, right? This is what there's this echo chamber that happens where you feel really good. People are saying you're really good at this. And so it's kind of this virtuous cycle of winning. And here's the thing, even when you're doing that, even right now, there's so many things in my focus that you just feel like, well, I can solve for that, and I can solve for that, and I can solve for that. And here's how you know you're doing it right. When you're actually focusing is that everything you do can become an asset. You don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel, right? Apple, for example, they just keep making the iPhone better. Everything they learn from the last iPhone makes the next iPhone better. The iPhone goes into the market and people experience it, and then they close that feedback loop, right? But if the feedback loop stops informing the evolution of your next step, you're not focused, right? If you're reinventing the wheel every time, you're not focused. And so, but how do you, back to your question, how do you know when to say no, when to end something? And it comes down to saying, well, what do I want? And is this going to get me there? And if you look at the bar for us, it's like we started to, in absolute, and this is honestly, here's the aha. Are you measuring what you want, what everyone else thinks is a good idea? Or are you measuring what you want with what gives you life and energy and excitement? Because I'll tell you, one of the things that had us stuck, even after we exited the bar, is that by everyone else's account, and Mike, you said it, like you just from afar, you never visited it, you haven't seen our financials, you didn't know, but outside looking in, those guys have a successful business. Right. And that is probably what will keep most people from finding that explosive, enriching, opportunity is is just because we can do it and even do it well doesn't mean we should. And it's this reflection of like saying like, well, just on the numbers, everyone would dream to have the business we had. But when we sat there and reflected on this, I don't know if this could sound like ego. It's like, well, even those numbers, like, but what if we focus this ability, this level of standard and service and experience and product creation and all these things, what if we focused in this avenue? What would be the outcome? Would we be more enriched, both as individuals and fulfilled and feel that energy, but also financially? And when we sat there and answered that question, the answer is yes. I mean, I'll give you another good example. We had a business in New York City called the New York NYC Bocce Club. And what we did is we went into breweries with turf bocce courts. You know bocce? You know,
yeah.
The small ball.
Familiar.
And it was very successful. Like, we sold out our first league and all that stuff. But then we ran the numbers and we were like, man, this is a lot of fun. Everyone would dream to have a profitable business. But when you start to look at it, it's like, well, what would it take for this to become an asset? And it was like, well, we would have to have like all this staff. We would have to be running like 10 events a week. We would have to have insurance. We would have to have vehicles to transport all this equipment. And then we'd have to start getting sponsorships to get probability. Yeah, we could do that. We already have some models for that. And we started to do all this stuff, and we kind of go, it's like, is that worth it? For some people, the answer may be yes, and that's okay. For us, it wasn't. So after one season of that, and everyone's like, God, when's the next one? We'll pay for the whole season in advance right now. Like, we're like, no, we learned, and we moved on. So you have to sit there and say, is this a good idea? Because that's what the market says, or does this feel like my path? Mm-hmm. And that's a hard decision to make, because it's very hard for when you know, on the whole, you're better at this type of business than most people in this business are. Mm-hmm. You choose to go for something, good versus great. And that's a tough decision. I think that's, for me, what it comes down to.
Yeah, you said something that is, I understand what you're saying, but I think it might be confusing to people, is that, does this feel right? Is this what I feel like I should do? There's a difficult understanding when it comes to feelings versus what makes the most business sense, right? Because if it's not enriching you, then that means you're not feeling like that's the right thing that you should be doing. However, if you feel like, hey, this is a great, fun thing to do, well, now you're probably pulling from the wrong feeling.
Yeah, that's so important. It's such a delicate balance there, because by no means am I saying that you should only pursue the path of easy. Mm-hmm. Don't get confused with the being enriched and feeling energized with no work.
Right.
And so I think that's an easy thing for people to understand and kind of internalize, which is and you just have to like it's so simple, but it's not easy, right? It's so simple to say, well, like, chase your passion. Don't chase your passion. You will realize your passion through trying things and finding where does your effort become rewarding. Mm-hmm. I think there is some truth to that old saying of, find something that you'll do, do 24 hours a day, and never need to be paid for it. Right? That whole idea. I mean, that's kind of true. Like, where do you just like, what makes you come alive? It doesn't mean you didn't have to just pour your blood, sweat, and tears into it. That's really it. It needs to be effort and energy. That's where passion lies, is where an incredible amount of effort is energizing. That you just wake up again, you're like, can I do this again? And it's not always going to be that. There's an ebb and flow to it. I'm not talking about like sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. Like, building a business, turning, going from zero to something that can produce money on its own, even if you don't show up, that is incredibly hard. Just as it's incredibly hard to raise a kid who can go out and change the world, right? I think it's the closest metaphor. My friend and I have talked about this before. Raising a kid that, then goes to Harvard and cures cancer, like, that is an incredible feat. For you to do that, it doesn't happen very often. It hasn't happened yet, right?
Okay. Not that specific one, no.
No, not that specific one, but versions of that, right? And so I think building businesses is very similar. Like, but parents, I would imagine, would be able to rationalize this argument just the same as to say it is incredibly hard to parent well, to pour into your children, but it's the most enriching experience of our lives. I would only imagine. That's why I want.
And important.
Right. Right. And so I think building a business is the same. If it's effort breeds energy. That is the intersection of truth. And you're saying, like, what if you put all this effort, but it's just like, it doesn't, well, then you try something new. Then you try something new and you try something new. But it's when the reward of effort is that energy, and then what sustains it? Well, the economics, right? What sustains it is like, because I'm only going to work this hard for so long until I have the asset that gives me some rest. And you have to know, but I back to the other thing that I think is the filter, the question you should ask yourself: is this a good idea according to everyone else, or is this the right path for me? And that right path is, does effort equal energy? Mm-hmm. And is it energizing and exciting? And just like, oh man, I just smacked my head up against the wall, but I learned something so new, and now I've figured it out, and I can put this thing in this place, and this place, and this place, and I'll never hit my head up against the wall in that way again. Mm-hmm. Asset, great. It's kind of like building blocks with the Legos. I got a new block there. Now that can never happen again, and I'll go find new openings to fill with new solutions, and that's what this journey is all about for me. Every day, is creating new blocks.
There are people who are realistic, but most of those are glasses half empty people who are just saying they're realistic. I think you are actually one of the few people I know who's a true realist, but a positive realist. So you're kind of on the glasses half full because that's the way that your mind goes, but you also are realistic about because you're a numbers guy. So maybe that helps. So the question is, can people be realistic, true realistic, and still accomplish these large goals?
Yes. So here's what it comes down to. You could say it, there's two ways to say it. The simplest way, personal responsibility. A more, kind of articulate way is, do you have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control? Is life happening to you or for you? And so I'm a realist in the sense that I know there are factors that are in the world that intentionally or unintentionally will thwart my progress, because, nothing, no energy output, is without resistance. But I choose personal responsibility. I have an internal locus of control. I believe life happens for me, not to me. And I think that's the difference. If you were to define my version of being a realist, is that I realize that things do happen, bad things can happen, challenges will arise, failures will be confronted. But at the end of the day, attitude is a choice. It is not a product of our circumstance. Remember that one? That is the difference. You could say glass half full, glass half empty, but at the end of the day, do you take responsibility for the glass? Do you have a personal responsibility to say, listen, I choose how I show up in this world every day, and I realize that there will be real resistance that comes at me, and it's my choice, and the actions I take with that choice, because that is a real decision, that is real responsibility, is followed with action. How I show up in every moment is what defines my level of responsibility, and I choose not to be a victim, but a victor, and I choose to conquer anything that's before me because I choose to do so. Because what else is there? We can blame everyone else, and then we don't have control, right? We are out of control. Because if it's everyone else is doing this to us, if all the challenges that we face are against us on purpose, then yes, give up, because you can't win.
So let me ask you this: because of your background, because of all the things that you've done, what is probably something you get asked a lot, and what's the question you should be asked?
I don't get asked the universal. So I don't get asked the same question over and again. But there is a reoccurring theme that happens to me.
Okay.
kind of will speak to your point here, which is I get a lot of direct admiration from people. It often happens after I speak. Like if I speak in front of a group, I've spoken to MBA programs and large groups and stuff before, and people come up to me and they say all these things, and then I also get it in conversations after meetings and stuff like that. And the thing that I like that people act as if when they say those things, that the energy that I receive from that is you're so lucky, or you. Well, usually it's an honest sense of appreciation and admiration. But the thing that they should be asking is, what did you do to get to this point where I would be so appreciative and admiring of you and what you've just put out into the world, how you just impacted me? Because the thing that I wish so many people would ask is what have you done to get here to this moment? Because that's the greatest gift I was given in my life is that for me, learning is entertainment. One of my mentors in life, he says that my greatest ability is learning agility. Is that I can take information in and then take it from here and pull it from this source, take it from these 9 businesses and assemble it into this synthesized point of view on business. And how does construction consulting inform a bar? And that's what learning agility looks like. How do I model something completely different and apply its core principles to something else? And me choosing to read, listen to a podcast, watch a webinar, go through a course, whatever, I choose that over a TV, in most cases. So that's an advantage I have. But nonetheless, I've put in the time, an incredible amount of time, for well over a decade. And that's the one thing that I think more people could be asking is, what book should I read? Hey, I am here. What should I do next to get there? Is rather than just look up to the people that you're impressed by, admire, why not ask them for some advice on your journey? Say, what were the blocks that led you to this moment? What can I maybe apply some of those blocks in the building blocks of my life? And I only say that is to say, not that I think you should be growing, but I think that is, the greatest point of enrichment in your life is growth and therefore contribution. But I just wish more people, and usually I confront those people when they come up to me. I was like, oh man, you're such an incredible speaker. Practice, every time I presented in front of a room, a group of people, it wasn't the first time I did it, that presentation. It was 5 to 10 times in front of a couch, in front of a bed, in front of an empty conference room. And people just don't, they don't realize how many times someone swung the bat before you saw them hit the home run.
Yeah, I think that is definitely, you hear that all the time. And I think that it's easy to understand when it comes to sports, because we kind of know that, or at some point in our life, we did something, if it was as simple as PE class. So we understand that there is that repetition works, that practice works. I think it's different when we get older and we try to do something we've never done before, especially if you don't have somebody to kind of hang on to. How do you even begin? How do you start? How do you practice? Does it seem weird to practice something? Does it seem weird to do whatever? When I started this, I set up the microphone. I kind of did like a fake presentation or fake podcast just to kind of see what it was like. And I also did some chats with some folks that I was friends with. We did like a virtual happy hour just to see what it was like, and it kind of worked some kinks out. And I'm glad I did that, because if I hadn't, then my first show would have been a disaster. And it's important to practice. And sometimes you don't even know what you need to do, but when you start doing it, it just kind of, things start to fall into place because you're doing the work.
Yeah, and I mean that's perfect. I think life is practice. Like you can look at this in anything. I did this so often in health that I defined my next decision by how poor my last one was. Well, I already had the pizza. I might as well grab the beer now. And I had one beer. I might as well have another beer. And it's like, and that led me to packing on over 100 pounds. And I think this is like in what you're saying. It's in all aspects of our life. We just have to take it one step at a time, and we can't let our last step define our next one. At least about what it means about who we are and how we can show up to that next moment. And I think that was true as a revelation for me in health. That if I ate the less than ideal food, it didn't define me. And I think as you're talking about it, like it's all practice and every choice that we make, every step that we take is just an opportunity to move forward. And sometimes it's not forward, and that doesn't mean that we're now a failure.
Right.
Failing does not make us a failure. And that's a tough thing to reason. But when you get there, you realize, which is what you said, is that everything is incremental. It can be even the downfalls can be like, well, what did I get from that? How did that inform how I maybe take my next step? Do I have more, am I a bit more timid in my next step for good reason? Or should I say, listen, it's that external locus versus internal. It's like, well, does what everyone else thinks of that misstep define me? Or do I realize, well, that's not the way to do it. Okay, here we go. If you can muster that point of view where it's like, that internal locus of control and say, listen, the only way I'm going to get there is to go through here a few times. I'm putting music online right now. I remember the first time I played in front of like 500 people at UCF. It was funny. I played in front of a room of 500 people, and now like I post videos online. It's just, for me, there's many points along the way that I would never have gotten up in a room full of 500 people. And I say that because it's like, but I always have that story, and you can. It's funny how every block, even some I don't know. Like I guess I'm kind of lost in how complex it is for you just to say, one more step, one more step. Sometimes there's a really great book. It's called Take Control of Your Life. I think this was an audio book. Mel Robbins, go look, it's on Audible. And one of the things she talks about, and I was just listening to it recently, is that out of fear, some of us, we overcomplicate things, right? You could have, Mike, thought the only way you could have started a podcast was to, be on 10 podcasts and have this complete, this fancy mic that you have here and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you could start a podcast with this.
Right.
I think done is better than perfect. I always say to my team, it's part of our culture, make it up, make it real, then make it better. People they think in the grand vision of where I want to be in 10 years, and they let that define their action. Let that inspire any action, but forget about it and say, what do I have to do next? And you did that. You just took one step. Well, I have to get comfortable talking with people, so let me start there.
Right.
Audio needs to be a bit better. Maybe I can enhance the audio. I think video would be better. Maybe I can bring video. But if you started and say, well, I need great audio, I need great video, I need to know how to do editing first. I'm going to go buy 10 courses on editing and all this stuff. And these are the people who never go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're constantly prepping and never actually doing. And again, I think that goes back to the whole thing you kind of touched on, which is fear. They know they need to do it, and then they start wrapping themselves up into it. And then at the end, they're like, it just became too difficult. It was going to be too much work. And then they go back to whatever it was they were doing, or they never actually started whatever it was that they decided to do.
And they define that as action. They say to themselves, it's like, I tried that. Did you?
Yeah, to make that a more relatable concept is, hey, I'm going to try out for the football team, basketball team, baseball team, whatever it is. I bought my cleats, I bought my socks, I've got my pads, I've got my workout routine set up so I know how I can work out. I got my family season tickets for the game so that way they can come watch all the games and everything. I've got my Instagram set up so that way I can post pictures when I'm playing these games. But then you never actually do the workouts and play the games because the workouts are really difficult. And you want to just play the game, but you can't do the training or the workouts can't play the game without doing the training and the workouts.
Yeah, and going back to the thing I said before, when effort equals energy, when you have such a clear picture that's so desirable to you of the energy that you could receive, the feeling, the victory, when you can experience the victory before you had it, and the effort to get to that victory, the training, the work, is exciting to you. Just like, I can already taste the moment of victory that I'm going to work as if now. That is the equation. And what you're describing in all that preparation is like, I think it's a simple thing that you can think about in business too. It's like, I don't know, I've never called it this, but it's like the business card, step. Like, and so many people, it's like, I'm going to start a business. I need a logo. I need to get a business card. And I was like, no, actually you need to create value for somebody and see if they'll pay you for it. Mm-hmm. When I stopped thinking that any of that matters, when my business actually became something, right? Now, I'm not saying that brands don't matter. I'm not saying all that stuff, but you don't have a business unless you have customers, and you don't have customers unless you have something of value to create that they're willing to pay for. And no person is going to decide whether your value is real or not based on a business card, based on a website, based on a logo, based on any of that. And it's the same thing in the sports analogy you said, right? You're not a football player because you had the jersey. You're a football player because you know how to play football.
Right. Anything you want to add? Anything that you think that's important? Maybe something that's specific for this time period? I mean, you've done a lot of things. I mean, it's a weird year. Obviously, 2020 is the one of those drawn in the sand years of all time. So anything that you?
I think I would anchor something I just said as like the guiding principle for progress for people is to make it up, make it real, make it better. Only focus on what can you do today and be committed that you'll do at least something tomorrow, right? And it's just about taking one step at a time and moving towards your bigger future. Just make progress. And sometimes that step is going to be 3 steps down this path, and you decide, look, I got to jump to this path over here. And that is okay because it informed that you didn't want that. And now you know. And that allows you to further narrow your focus because you now know what you can say no to and why you're saying no. And the reinforcement of focus is about saying no. So it's one step at a time. Just take one step. And that also goes in business. So many people, it's like, if my goal is to get a customer and these are the potential people with the problems they have, and this is the thing I want them to purchase, so many people think that they're going to jump from here to here. No, what's the next step that I need to convince them of? I don't know, for some people it's to get to my website. For some people it's to pick up the phone and call me. For some people it's to walk through my door. Don't try to get so convinced on selling them the widget that you offer, the service you can provide, when you haven't even got good about getting their attention and getting them to move one step closer to you. So I would take that same principle as how you can grow as an individual. Just take one step, do one action, just get started, make it up, make it real, and then you make it better. Do the same thing in your business. Take one step and sell your prospect on the next step. So people say, we do a lot of financial services. People say, I'm going to sell you a financial strategy. I was like, well, no, that's not the next step. The first thing is you have to have a conversation with them. You're never going to move their money into some financial product until you have a conversation. So why are we focused on the product? How about we get them so focused on the value you create just in a conversation? Sell the conversation. Everyone else is talking about products. They're complied by them and all this stuff. So take one step. Sell the next step. Take the next step. Just go one step.
All right, Jim. Well, if people want to check your music out, or if they want to check you out for more inspirational thoughts and ideas, is there a way that people can look you up? Or
I think the best place, just go on like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and it's in all cases, /JFisherman, JFISHERMAN. Okay. I'm on the same in all those platforms. I'm most active on probably Instagram and Facebook. if I could give you all one book, it would that I think whether you're pursuing a career or your own business, it's called Business Brilliant by Schiff. So check that book out. I like it on audio. It's an incredible book. Very digestible, a lot of great stories, really tell you what are the defining principles, no matter what path you're on, that create that abundance in your life.
All right, Jim. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. It was great. I mean, to use an old term, lots of nuggets in that.
Appreciate that.
That was really good.